Hello. In this video, I make an apron out of muslin cloth. I have already posted videos showing the first 3 aprons I made out of denim. In this video, I cut the cloth into a square and then I start the process of cutting the armholes and cutting the remaining portion of the apron. This is a personal practice project to improve my measuring, cutting, and sewing skills. The apron you are looking at is ready to have the outside edges straight stitched and then zigzag stitched. Following that, I will measure the seam allowance, iron the piece, and then sew the seam allowances around the piece. I may not install the straps. Thank you for viewing me learning and practicing how to make this apron. I'll be using the Singer 4432 and maybe the Singer 401A. Both machines have a 16 gauge needle in them. Enjoy. Please like and subscribe. Thank you. Here I am, back in business, just getting started squaring up some muslin. And I'm going to make a muslin apron. I've got the measurements. I'm going to measure it all out, cut it, and as you can see, this is the first edge that I am getting square or very, very close to true. So I'm going to next move to probably the right side, move this over something like that, and then get a true straight edge along there. So then I'll have a good perpendicular right angle top and right side, and the other two lines will be very simple to establish and cut. So that's where I'm getting started. I mean, this is normal process for me, that when I'm using new cloth and I'm starting to do a project, make something, I make sure that it's good and square, and then I do the little bit of stitching, zigzag and straight edge stitching before I start to do the seam allowances. Now I'm going to make a cut right along there to square up that top edge. And I'm still just squaring it up, and then I can calculate the dimensions of the apron. There, I've got it cut out to the dimensions. Now what I have to do is draw the seam allowance lines on it, and then I'll press it, and then start doing the edging, and then stitching the seam allowances, getting all that ready. So that's what's going on now. Yeah, it feels good to sew. When I turn, I usually do a little back stitch just to tighten everything up, like this. Just to anchor it in there. So now I gotta zigzag the whole thing. Now apparently by virtue of the zigzag stitch you don't necessarily need to back stitch, but I usually do anyway, because why not? Jeb the Ripper. Jeb the Stitcher. Jeb the Zigzagger. Now I'm going to back zigzag this. I'm at the start end, so just for the fun of it, I'm going to do it. There we go. So I've got the edge stitching, the straight stitching done, and the zigzagging stitching done. And now I'm going to mark out my 1/2 inch seam allowance, press that, and then stitch the seam allowance. Here I've started marking the seam allowance. I'm drawing 3/8 of an inch marks. I'm using the little gauge and a Sharpie pen, and I'm using the red. So once I get my guides put on there, then I'll draw a line, and then I'll fold and clip on the line, and then press it over at the iron board with the iron to get a nice sharp flat edge on the first fold of the seam allowance. And then I'll do the second seam allowance so that everything is, so that the edge is buried and protected, and then sew that seam allowance correctly. So right here you can see the lines in red. I made the red marks, and then I put the square on, and I used a red ballpoint pen to make the lines to connect the marks. Just a little bit to the north of there's the clips in that Tupperware, in that container, and so I'm going to make the first fold and then iron the crease all the way around, and once I get it all folded over and ironed and in place and clipped and all that, then I'll be able to stitch it up. So here I am ready to give it a go with the iron and get the first fold on the seam allowance pressed down nice and sharp. You can see I've got all the clips on the border of the apron, and so that's where I'm at now. And it's hanging off the other side of the ironing board. I used a lot of clips, probably used about 25 or so, maybe a little more. So, but the clips that I buy at up in the garment district cost you about $35 Canadian for a firm plastic container, bag kind of container of these clips, and you get 60 clips. So I've got a fair amount. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I've got the double fold on the seam allowance done, and so now I'm ready. And I did press it quite nicely actually, and I'm ready to take it over to the sewing machine and do the final bit of stitching to get this complete, of course minus the straps. And I'm not going to do the straps today, I'll do them next time. There, so we've gone all the way around with the first row stitch. So I'm going to do another row, the outside row, or whatever. There we go. That's all she wrote. So here's the end result. This is the outside of the apron and the muslin apron, and I've got 2 rows of black thread on this side, and then on the inside I've got the 2 rows of orange thread. Let me get a little closer on that. There you can see the black threads, and then on the inside of the apron you see the double row of orange thread. So it was nice to sew. I hadn't sewn for probably a couple of weeks, so it was nice to get back at it, get a project going again. So I'm pretty pleased. Had enjoyed doing that bit of work. Nice little project. Thanks for watching, my friends. Remember, most importantly, have fun, stay safe. We'll see you again real soon. Adios, amigos.